name is Veronica Plume. My traditional name is Sepatsumatsaki. That is Sweetgrass Woman in the Blackfoot language. I am Cree as well. I am called Wigaskwekwe in the Cree language. I am currently a member of the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and I'm the Indigenous liaison for the Calgary zone for the primary healthcare networks. And I'm facilitating our Indigenous Health Learning Series number 2 on land acknowledgements. Just 1 second, I will be sharing our PowerPoint for this session here. So Indigenous Health Learning Series number 2, Understanding Land Acknowledgements. So Indigenous Health Learning Series 2, Understanding Land Acknowledgements. So sharing our land acknowledgement for Treaty 7 region in our southern Alberta. A lot of people think that our land acknowledgements are redundant. However, I don't think that they are. They're an opportunity to reflect on the land, the relationship that the Indigenous peoples of Treaty 7 have with the land here. Many of you may not know the confluence of the Bow River and the Elbow River. It was a gathering place for thousands of years before the arrival of the Northwest Mounted Police of 1875. It's a good time to reflect on the many areas here in Wilkinsis, Calgary area. Nose Hill was called a lookout hill by our Blackfoot Confederacy. It was used to monitor buffalo, vision quests. It was a ceremonial site. The Bow River Valley, it was a major travel corridor, and it was used for seasonal use. It was for our Blackfoot Confederacy. St. Patrick's Island and East Village area. It was part of the broader confluence area. It was connected to areas for traditional gathering, spiritual, and creation stories. The Fish Creek and Bow River Junction, it was used for seasonal camping, hunting, fishing. It was access to plants and natural resources. So it's a good time to reflect on this land, Treaty 7, not only on Treaty 7 territories, on the many treaties that we have here in Canada. It's a good time to reflect that this land was occupied prior to Canada becoming Canada. It's a good time to reflect that many of these areas here in Wilkinsis were significant areas for our Blackfoot Confederacy. So I wanted to share that because land acknowledgements are not redundant. They're a good time to reflect. So this learning series, our objectives are going to be, understanding the meaning of land acknowledgements, pronunciations of Indigenous communities within Treaty 7, and moving from statement to action. So our land acknowledgement meaning, we're going to talk about the context of colonial history and the ongoing impacts. It's not a script and it's not a checkbox. Again, it's a time to reflect. It's time to understand the relationship responsibility and its recognition to the land and the people that it's connected to. So context of colonial history and ongoing impacts. So recognition of disposition and historical injustices. Land acknowledgements are rooted in the recognition that Indigenous nations one second. Yes, recognition of dispossession and historical injustices. Land acknowledgements are rooted in the recognition that Indigenous nations lived on, stewarded, and governed these lands long before colonial arrival. They addressed how colonization involved forced displacement, broken treaties, resource extraction, and policies aimed at assimilation, acknowledging that today's structures were built through these injustices. Number two, understanding the ongoing impacts of colonization. Colonialism is not just historical, it continues to shape inequities in health, education, justice, housing, and land access. A land acknowledgement should help people understand that its purpose is not symbolic. It is connected to ongoing issues like jurisdictional challenges, loss of language and culture, and intergenerational trauma. And number three, responsibility to act towards reconciliation and relationship building. Acknowledging land means recognizing a responsibility to honor treaty relationships, support Indigenous sovereignty, promote Indigenous-led initiatives, and commit to tangible actions in recognition. It encourages people to think about what they do beyond words. Policy change, partnership, and uplifting Indigenous voices. So land acknowledgements, they're not a script and they're not a checkbox. It should come with personal and intentional action. It should be learning, reflection, and not a performance. It connects words to action. So it should be personal and intentional. A land acknowledgement is not meant to be read verbatim from a template. It should reflect the speaker's own understanding, relationship to the land, and commitment to reconciliation. Personalizing it shows respect and demonstrates genuine engagement rather than reciting words. It requires learning and reflection. It's not a performance. When it becomes a checkbox, the meaning is lost. A land acknowledgement should come from a place of learning about the nations whose land you occupy, understanding the history and reflecting on the responsibility that come with the knowledge. This moves the practice from performance to purpose. It's connecting words to action. It's a meaningful acknowledgement ask. What am I doing beyond the statement to contribute to reconciliation? It should inspire action, supporting Indigenous initiatives, amplifying Indigenous voices, and honoring treaty responsibilities. This ensures it's not symbolic. It is not symbolic, but part of an ongoing commitment. So land acknowledgements, meaning the relationship, responsibility, and recognition. So relationship, responsibility, and recognition, what does that mean? A land acknowledgement reminds us that we are in ongoing relationship with the land and with the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit who have cared for this land since time immemorial. It emphasizes that these relationships are living, they're not historical. They're built through trust, reciprocity, and continued engagement. What does responsibility mean? It's acting on treaty and ethical obligations. Land acknowledgements carry an expectation of responsibility. This includes honoring treaty obligations, supporting Indigenous rights, and committing to meaningful action, not just words. Responsibility means asking, what do I play in reconciliation? What role do I play in reconciliation? And how can I contribute in a good way? Recognition, what does that mean? That means honoring Indigenous sovereignty and presence. It's a meaningful acknowledgement recognizing that sovereignty, histories, and ongoing presence of indigenous nations. It makes visible the nations whose lands we are on, and it acknowledges their inherent rights, governance, and cultural continuity. Recognition is about truth-telling, and it's affirming that Indigenous peoples are not just part of the past, but central to the present and the future. So, pronunciations. Pronunciations have been shared with me that could be shared with some support. So I've put some pronunciations together here using references as well. So here we have the Treaty First Nations pronunciations. We have the Blackfoot Confederacy, which is the Siksikatsitapi, and pronunciation is Siksikatsitapi. And then we got Siksika, and you just say Siksika. Pretty simple. Kainai, we say Gaina. Pigani, they say Begani. So the P's are like, you pronounce them with the B's, and the K's, we pronounce them with the G's. Skapi Begani. So there are Blackfoot relatives across the medicine line. And again, pronunciation is Skapi Begani. Pretty simple. Again, our G's are pronounced, our K's are pronounced with a G, and our K's are pronounced with a G. Again, the Blackfoot Confederacy is Sigsigates sits api. Siksika is Siksiga. Kainai is pronounced Gaina. Igani is pronounced Igani. And then our Blackfoot relatives across the medicine line are Amskapi Bigani. And next we will practice pronunciations for our relatives to the west, and here in Calgary to our southwest, our Tsuut'ina First Nation relatives. So we have our Earhei Nakota that are in the west. Again, they are, pronunciation is Earhei Nakota. Pretty simple. So they're also called Winchispa. Winchispa. And then we got the bear's paw is bear's paw. Pretty simple. Chiniki is Chiniki. Exactly the way it sounds and looks. Good stony, stony, good stony. And then again, we got our Tsuut'ina, Tsuut'ina First Nations. And then next, we have our pronunciations for our gathering place, Gutsitsi. So Gutsitsi, Gutsitsi, that's the gathering place here in Mohkinstsis. And then we call the city of Calgary Mohkinstsis, is also home to Calgary. And then the Métis, they are called the Métis Otimpimsuak. And then we have our Northern Cree and our, they're called Otasquani. Pretty simple pronunciations. I know some folks get a little intimidated by the pronunciations, but they're pretty straightforward once you understand that some of our letters are pronounced differently. For instance, the G Gutsatsi is different. And then Mokinsis, we have Mokinsis, but we call it Moginsis, Mokinsis, Mokinsis. So pretty straightforward. So moving on to statement to action. 1 second here. Moving on to statement to action. Yes, so we're going to talk about relationship and engagement, education and capacity building, clinical practice and care delivery, policy and organizational change, community investment and support, accountability and follow through. What do those look like? So moving from statement to action, relationship and engagement. Relationship and engagement. These are everyday grounded actions that honor the spirit of Treaty 7 nations and Indigenous community members who seek care. Building relationship with local elders and knowledge keepers for guidance on programs and learning or ceremony. You can partner with our Treaty 7 nations health teams. We have the Siksiga, the Bigani, the Gainai, the Sutina, and the Ayahana Nakota and the Sutina nations. They all share priorities like screening, chronic disease management, or culturally safe care pathways. You can invite Indigenous community representatives to the PCN planning tables where discussions and decisions impact Indigenous patients. We can honor nation protocol that includes offering tobacco, honoraria, and appropriate preparation when requesting elder participation. How this supports your local, how this supports the land acknowledgement. It demonstrates that that you recognize Treaty 7 nations as living governments with whom you are in ongoing relationship with, and not just peoples of the past. What does education and capacity building look like? These support non-Indigenous staff to move above acknowledgements into understanding. You can have annual training that is Indigenous health equity, anti-racism, or the history of health systems and Indigenous peoples. You can provide pronunciation guides like we're doing today for nation names and key terms used in meetings. You could offer experiential learning, visits to community centers, Indigenous cultural events, or local nations by invitation. You can create reflection spaces and team meetings to discuss learnings, impacts, and next steps. Why does this matter? Staff can't make meaningful acknowledgement without foundational knowledge. Clinical practice and care delivery. What does that look like? This could look like highly relevant for patient, PCN clinician, nurses, mental health providers, and care coordinators. Integrate cultural safety practices into care pathways, asking about cultural supports, including family and community, respecting ceremony and medicines. Can create easier referral routes to Indigenous specific health services, including traditional knowledge holders and cultural supports and nation-based health teams. Can ensure clinical tools, intake forms, mental health assessments, and care plans include culturally relevant elements and avoid deficit framing. You can use trauma-informed approaches that specifically recognize the impacts of colonial health systems and residential schools. Why it matters? It directly connects your acknowledgements to improving Indigenous patient experience. Policy and organizational change commitment. What does that look like? These actions can signal accountability at the leadership and system level. It can include Indigenous representation in governance, advisory groups, or decision-making bodies. You can create policies that recognize Indigenous spiritual practices and medicines as a valid healing approach. You can ensure job descriptions include competencies in cultural humility or Indigenous health knowledges. You can develop an Indigenous health strategy that is unique to the Calgary Zone PCNs, and it's tied to TRC calls to action and MMIWG2S plus calls for justice. Why does this matter? It moves reconciliation beyond symbolic culture change into structural change. Community investment and support, what does that look like? These commitments tie PCNs back to local nations and community-based well-being. This could include sponsor or support Indigenous wellness events, gatherings, or health fairs hosted by local nations or organizations. You can purchase from Indigenous-owned businesses. You could display local Indigenous artwork in clinic spaces to create a welcoming environment. You can compensate Indigenous partners fairly using established honoraria and protocol guidelines. Why does it matter? It really reflects respect, reciprocity, and economic inclusion. Accountability and follow through. What does that look like? Without this, acknowledgements risk feeling performative. Publicly share reconciliation commitments each year and report on progress. Review service data to identify inequities in access, outcomes, or continuity of care for Indigenous patients. Invite Indigenous partners to co-evaluate or co-design programs. Create internal truth and reconciliation working groups to steward ongoing action. Why does this matter? It builds trust. It's especially important in healthcare where the Indigenous peoples often lack the trust within the system. So again, practical local commitments for meaningful action. Again, it's relationship and engagement, building and maintaining ongoing relationships, education capacity building, engage in co-design and shared decision-making, clinical practice and care delivery, support culturally safe and community-driven health initiatives. Policy and organizational change. It requires Indigenous involvement in policy development and program design. Community investment and support. Invest directly in Indigenous-led health, healing, and wellness initiatives. And ensure land acknowledgements translate into ongoing action and not a one-time initiative. And that is the end of our slides. And that is the end of our land acknowledgement workshop. I hope you will take these tips for your land acknowledgement to heart and to action in your organization or in your personal life as well. Thank you for joining me on this land acknowledgement workshop. Please fill out this QR code for evaluation. Thank you. And supporting.